Hi, Joni here. Ukraine versus Gaza. The scale that's missing from the conversation. That will be the topic of today's video. Let's get to it. I hate comparing wars, and there are many good reasons for that. Wars are all different, and comparisons make little sense most of the time. Too many analysts and commentators compare them, and it's mostly useless and only angers people. But I've heard too many Europeans say stupid things when comparing the war in Gaza and the war in Ukraine. So I decided to make a video about it, for people to understand the difference in scale. Many Europeans don't properly grasp the scale of the war in Ukraine, especially when comparing it to Gaza. I've heard and seen many people in Europe think that the war in Gaza has more victims than the war in Ukraine, and that it's a bigger war somehow. And it's not. And again, this is not a moral comparison. I'm not trying to say who is right or who is wrong or who is the bigger victim. This video is about understanding the sheer magnitude of Ukraine's suffering and displacement, and understanding the differences in magnitude between the two conflicts. These differences are bigger than most understand. Both are horrific wars with immense civilian suffering, but Russia's war in Ukraine is on a vastly larger scale. Geographically, militarily, in terms of casualties, but also in terms of displacement. According to data from Uppsala, Mariupol alone saw between 27 and 88,000 deaths, mostly civilian. That's potentially almost as many as in Gaza, just in the city of Mariupol. Mariupol is not even a regional capital city in Ukraine. It has a way smaller population than Gaza, and the deaths in Mariupol happened over a time of less than 3 months, in 2022, while the deaths in Gaza happened in almost 2 years. That's a huge difference. And when looking at total casualties of these wars, Russia's war in Ukraine has caused between 1 and 2 million total casualties when looking at both sides. Russia alone has more than 1 million total casualties. Russian troops have more casualties than Ukraine, but Ukraine has way more civilian casualties than Russia, and we know why. When looking at the war in Gaza, it likely has somewhere between 200 and 250,000 total casualties combining both sides, which is massive, but far fewer than the 1 to 2 million in Ukraine. The displacement is also staggering. Around 10 million Ukrainians have had to flee their home. Gaza had a population of around 2.2 million in 2022, which means that almost 5 times Gaza's population has been displaced in Ukraine. Again, I say this for the scale. People need to understand that. This isn't a moral ranking in any way, and I know that civilian death rates are proportionally higher in Gaza than in Ukraine, but the total casualties of Russia's war in Ukraine are close to Gaza's total population. That's the scale we're talking about. It's huge, and it also happens in a way larger area. The frontline in Ukraine is almost 1,200 kilometers long. It's just a completely different scale. And now that we have looked at the differences in scale, I also want to talk about something else. I've heard many in the West say that they care more about Gaza than about Ukraine, and often because of misunderstandings, especially those that I talked about in this video, but there are also other misunderstandings. Some say that the difference is that Gaza is a genocide and Ukraine is not, which is false. Ukraine is facing a clear genocide. To justify its invasion, Russia is denying Ukraine's existence, and also denying Ukrainian identity, culture and history, and it's acting on it. It's russifying occupied areas, and it's kidnapping thousands of Ukrainian children and sending them into re-education camps. That fits perfectly with the definition of genocide. Ukraine is facing a genocide. And finally, some people I know in Europe have told me that they care more about the fate of people in Gaza because Ukraine is getting help from Europe, but Gaza is not, especially on a military level. And for them, it's important that they understand that the nature of these two conflicts is completely different. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was completely unprovoked. Russia moved troops to Ukraine's border months before invading. It had prepared to invade for years, and there was zero provocation from Ukraine. In the case of Gaza, it's more complex. In both cases, in Ukraine and in Gaza, the war has been lasting for longer than this phase of the war. But the current phase in Gaza started after October 7th, after the attack Hamas did on Israel and after it took hostages. And that's a massive difference. Had Ukraine done something similar before the full-scale invasion, global support would be completely different today. Ukraine wouldn't be getting military aid the same way. That's a massive difference that's not being talked about enough. But to conclude, both wars are tragic and have caused immense suffering. But Russia's war in Ukraine is bigger in scale and also has far deeper consequences for Europe and its security. Yet many Europeans seem more focused on Gaza. And in many cases it is due to the fact that they don't understand this difference in scale. What do you think about this? Do you think that most people understand this difference in scale? I've seen and heard many that don't. Why do you think that people have such a hard time with this? Why do you think that many in Europe care more about Gaza than about Ukraine? How long do you think that the wars will last? Write your thoughts in the comments. Well, that was it for today's video. I hope that you liked it. If you did, please like and subscribe and see you in the next video. Thank you.